My name is Michael Harris, and I'm 42 years old. For the past 8 years, I've been working as a senior sales executive at Peterson Industrial Components, one of the largest suppliers of manufacturing parts in the Midwest. Our headquarters sits in a sprawling complex in suburban Detroit, where the hum of machinery and the smell of metal polish have become as familiar to me as morning coffee. I've built this company's reputation client by client, contract by contract. Every handshake mattered. Every deal I closed wasn't just about numbers. It was about trust. In the industrial components business, you're only as good as your last delivery, and your reputation travels faster than gossip in a small town. My office on the third floor overlooked the main production floor, where $120,000 CNC machines carved precision parts from blocks of aircraft-grade aluminum. I'd spent countless hours down there, learning the intricacies of metallurgy, understanding tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch, and building relationships with machinists who'd been perfecting their craft for decades. By late 2023, I was on the verge of securing the biggest contract in our company's history, a 3-year, $12 million supply agreement with Ford's Dearborn assembly plant. This wasn't luck. This was the result of years of relationship building, late nights studying technical specifications, and understanding exactly what our clients needed before they even knew it themselves. The Ford deal had been 18 months in the making. I'd flown to Dearborn 6 times, sat through technical reviews that lasted 8 hours, and personally walked their quality assurance team through our manufacturing processes. Sarah Martinez, Ford's purchasing director, had become more than a client. She was a professional ally who appreciated my attention to detail and my ability to deliver exactly what I promised. I'd been promised the vice president position for months. Mr. Thompson, our CEO, had practically guaranteed it. "Michael, this Ford deal will seal it," he told me over coffee in his corner office, gesturing toward the framed photos of classic Mustangs that lined his walls. "VP of Sales is yours. You've earned it." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I'd earned it. Thompson was 58, a second-generation owner who'd inherited Peterson Industrial from his father in 2010. Under his leadership, the company had grown from $65 million to $160 million in annual revenue. He was smart, charismatic, and had always treated me fairly. Or so I thought. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video, and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. But in January 2024, everything changed. Thompson called me into his office on a Thursday morning, January 18th to be exact. I remember the date because it was the day my professional life took an unexpected turn. Rachel Cooper was sitting there, a 28-year-old marketing coordinator who'd been with the company for barely 7 months. She had her MBA from Northwestern, sure, but she'd never closed a deal worth more than $40,000. Rachel had joined Peterson Industrial the previous June, hired straight from a consulting firm in Chicago, where she'd specialized in digital transformation strategies for manufacturing companies. She was attractive, confident, and spoke the language of modern business, all buzzwords and PowerPoint presentations. But she'd never spent a day on a factory floor, or negotiated with a purchasing manager who cared more about delivery schedules than social media metrics. "Michael, I need to discuss some organizational changes," Thompson said, not quite meeting my eyes. His usual confident demeanor seemed strained, and he kept fidgeting with his wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd never noticed before. "We're restructuring the sales division. Rachel will be taking over as VP of Sales." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt my coffee mug grow heavy in my hands. "I don't understand," I said slowly. "Look, you're a great salesman, Michael, but we need fresh blood. Someone with a more modern approach. Rachel brings innovative ideas that align with our new corporate vision." Thompson's voice carried a rehearsed quality, like he'd practiced this speech in the mirror. Rachel smiled. It wasn't warm. "I'm really excited to implement some dynamic strategies," she said, her voice carrying that particular blend of ambition and condescension that I'd learned to recognize in young MBA graduates. "The industry is changing rapidly, and we need to evolve our approach to stay competitive. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, fury was building. Not explosive rage, something colder, more calculating. I see, I replied. When does this take effect? Immediately, Thompson answered. But don't worry, your position remains secure. We value your experience. You'll be Rachel's senior sales manager, helping her transition into the role. The irony wasn't lost on me. After 8 years of building relationships and closing deals, I was being demoted to help my replacement learn the job I'd already mastered. I shook both their hands, congratulated Rachel, walked back to my desk like nothing had happened. But as I sat there, staring at the Ford contract I'd spent months preparing, 452 pages of technical specifications, delivery schedules, and quality requirements, one thing became crystal clear. This wasn't about fresh blood or innovation. This was about something else entirely. My first clue came during Rachel's inaugural team meeting on Monday, January 22nd. She'd gathered our 8-person sales team in the main conference room, armed with a presentation titled, Revolutionizing Our Sales Paradigm. For 45 minutes, she clicked through slides filled with generic business terminology and stock photos of diverse professionals shaking hands. We need to leverage synergistic opportunities to maximize our market penetration, she announced, pointing to a pie chart that showed no actual data. Our value proposition needs to be more disruptive. Jim Kowalski, our 52-year-old account manager who'd been selling industrial components since before Rachel was born, raised his hand. Rachel, can you be more specific about what changes you want to implement? Great question, Jim. We need to think outside the box about how we engage with stakeholders. She wasn't answering the question, just deflecting with more buzzwords. But what specifically are you planning to change about our current processes? Jim pressed. Rachel glanced at me, then back at Jim. Michael will handle the technical implementation details. My focus is on strategic vision and market positioning. That's when I realized she had no idea what she was doing. Over the next few weeks, I watched Rachel stumble through meetings like a freshman in advanced calculus. She'd throw around buzzwords, synergy, paradigm shifts, disruptive innovation. But when clients asked technical questions about torque specifications or metallurgy standards, she'd glance at me with panic in her eyes. Michael can handle the technical details, she'd say, forcing a confident smile. I played along, answered every question, saved every presentation, but I also started doing something else, documenting everything, every email she sent with incorrect specifications, every client call where she promised delivery dates we couldn't meet, every meeting where she made decisions without consulting our manufacturing team. I kept it all. Screenshots, digital recordings from calls she'd asked me to join, copies of contracts she'd modified without understanding the implications. It wasn't sabotage, I was just being thorough. My father, a quality control inspector at GM for 37 years, had taught me a simple rule. When something doesn't smell right, start keeping records. The truth always comes out eventually. By February 2024, the pattern was unmistakable. Rachel would schedule client meetings at upscale downtown restaurants, places like the Whitney or Coach Insignia where a business lunch runs $75 per person, trying to impress buyers with atmosphere instead of substance. Meanwhile, our actual orders were slipping. The Johnson Automotive account, worth $2.1 million annually, was getting restless. Dave Kellerman, their procurement manager, and a straight-talking former Marine, called me directly on February 20th. Mike, what's going on over there? This new VP of yours promised us modified gaskets by March 5th, but your production team says they never got the specs. Dave and I had worked together for 4 years. He appreciated honesty and despised corporate double talk. Let me look into that, Dave, I replied calmly, though I already knew exactly what had happened. Rachel had promised custom modifications without consulting engineering. Look, I like you, Mike, but if Peterson can't deliver what they promise, I've got 3 other suppliers who can. That evening I stayed late to dig deeper. I wasn't snooping, just reviewing email chains I'd been copied on. Rachel had developed a habit of including me on correspondence, presumably to demonstrate that she was keeping me in the loop of my former responsibilities. That's when I found it. An exchange between Rachel and Thompson from November 2023, weeks before my restructuring meeting. The subject line read, "After tonight." The emails were intimate. Thompson talking about weekend trips to his cabin in Traverse City. Rachel mentioning how she'd do anything to prove herself worthy of bigger responsibilities. There were dinner receipts attached. $320 at a Linnea in Chicago, $195 at Coach Insignia in Detroit, all charged to Thompson's corporate card. I printed everything, created backup files on a personal drive, not out of malice, but because my gut told me this story wasn't over. Meanwhile, Rachel's inexperience was creating real problems. The Ford contract, my Ford contract, was sitting on her desk, unchanged for 3 weeks. Ford's purchasing director, Sarah Martinez, had been calling for status updates. Rachel kept telling her everything was on track, but she hadn't even reviewed the technical appendices that detailed our manufacturing capabilities. I knew Sarah well. We'd worked together on 2 previous contracts, including a $6.8 million transmission component deal in 2022. She appreciated straight talk and hated being misled, so when she called me directly in early March 2024, I was honest. "Sarah, I need to be transparent with you. There have been some internal changes that might affect our timeline." "What kind of changes, Michael? You know how important this contract is to our Q2 targets. We've got assembly line modifications scheduled based on your delivery commitments. New leadership is still getting up to speed on the technical requirements. I'd recommend scheduling a comprehensive review meeting to ensure all specifications align with your needs." It was the truth, not manipulation, just facts. 2 days later, Sarah's team identified 14 specification errors in Rachel's version of the contract. Requirements for heat-resistant alloys had been changed to standard steel, a modification that would have caused component failure within 8,000 miles of normal driving. Delivery schedules conflicted with Ford's production calendar. Quality certifications were incomplete. "This is unacceptable," Sarah told Thompson during an emergency conference call I was asked to join. "We need someone who understands our requirements. These aren't minor oversights. These are fundamental engineering errors that could compromise vehicle safety." Rachel sat silent, her face flushed. She couldn't answer basic questions about tensile strength or corrosion resistance, concepts that any VP of sales in our industry should understand intuitively. Thompson kept clearing his throat, looking increasingly uncomfortable. After the call, I watched Rachel hurry to the bathroom. Thompson followed her with his eyes, then noticed me observing. "Michael," he said quietly, "we might need to revisit some arrangements." I nodded professionally. "Whatever's best for the company, sir." But inside, I was already 3 moves ahead. By April 2024, Rachel's house of cards was collapsing faster than I'd anticipated. The Johnson Automotive account, the one she'd mishandled with the gasket specifications, pulled their contract. $2.1 million in annual revenue, gone. Dave Kellerman didn't even call her directly. He called me. "Mike, we're going with Hartwell Industries. At least they understand what we need." His voice carried disappointment, not anger. That made it worse. "I hate to do this to you personally, but I've got assembly lines depending on these components." Rachel tried to spin it in the next executive meeting. "Sometimes you have to let go of legacy clients to make room for growth," she announced, clicking through a PowerPoint presentation filled with stock photos and generic charts. Johnson Automotive wasn't aligned with our strategic vision moving forward. I watched Thompson nod along, but his confidence was wavering. The quarterly numbers don't lie, and we were down 16% from the previous year. Our CFO, Janet Williams, kept asking pointed questions about pipeline projections and client retention rates that Rachel couldn't answer. Then Ford made their decision. Sarah Martinez called on a Tuesday morning in late April 2024. I was in my office reviewing manufacturing reports when my phone buzzed. "Michael, I need to speak with you privately." "Of course, Sarah. What can I help you with?" "We're terminating the contract negotiations. The technical gaps are too significant. And frankly, we've lost confidence in Peterson Industrial's current leadership structure. My heart sank, but not for the reasons she might have expected. I understand your position completely. Michael, you know this isn't about you. Your work has always been impeccable, but we can't move forward under these circumstances. We've got $180 million in vehicle production depending on reliable component suppliers. $12 million. 3 years of guaranteed business. Gone. The ripple effects were immediate. Word travels fast in the automotive supply chain, and losing Ford sent signals to other potential clients. 2 prospects I'd been nurturing for months suddenly became unavailable for meetings. When Rachel heard the news, she did exactly what I expected. She tried to blame me. In a heated meeting with Thompson and Janet Williams, Rachel claimed I had undermined her authority with clients. Michael has been sabotaging my relationships, she said, her voice rising. He's been having side conversations, making clients doubt my capabilities. I remained calm. Rachel, I've only answered direct questions from clients who called me. Would you like me to stop taking their calls? That's not, you know what I mean. Thompson looked exhausted. The bags under his eyes had deepened over the past month, and his usually immaculate appearance seemed disheveled. Michael, is there any truth to what Rachel is saying? I pulled out my phone and opened my call log. Every conversation I've had with clients is documented in our CRM system. Sarah Martinez called me directly because she couldn't reach anyone else who understood the technical specifications. Dave Kellerman called because promised deliveries weren't matching production schedules. I paused. I can provide transcripts if needed. Janet Williams, our CFO and the most level-headed person in the room, leaned forward. What exactly are you suggesting we should have done differently, Rachel? Rachel fumbled through her notes. We need to be more proactive, more innovative in our approach. The Ford contract required specific metallurgical certifications, Janet continued. Did you verify those requirements with our quality assurance team? Silence. What about the delivery schedules? Did you coordinate with manufacturing before promising those dates? More silence. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. That evening, Thompson asked me to stay after work. We sat in his office as the cleaning crew worked around us, their vacuum cleaners creating white noise in the distance. He poured himself 3 fingers of bourbon from the bottle he kept in his desk drawer, Maker's Mark 46, the same brand his father used to drink. Michael, I need your help. What kind of help? Fix this, whatever it takes. The board is asking questions I can't answer. He looked desperate. The confident executive who'd restructured my career 4 months earlier now seemed small, defeated. His hands shook slightly as he raised the glass to his lips. I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. Take over the Ford negotiation, rebuild the Johnson relationship, do whatever you do. He took a long drink. I'll make it worth your while. We can discuss a significant salary increase, maybe $145,000. I considered his offer carefully. Not the money, the moment. Here was the man who'd betrayed my trust, asking me to save him from the consequences of his own choices. Mr. Thompson, I appreciate the confidence, but I think it's too late for that approach. What do you mean? Our clients don't just buy components, they buy trust. And right now, Peterson Industrial's word doesn't carry the weight it used to. He stared into his bourbon. So what are you saying? I'm saying that some problems can't be fixed with the same thinking that created them. The next morning, Janet Williams scheduled a board meeting for the following Friday. Word spread quickly through the office. Emergency sessions usually meant one of 2 things: major acquisitions or major terminations. Rachel spent that week in panic mode, scheduling meetings with anyone who would listen, trying to build support. She cornered me in the break room on Wednesday, her usual confidence replaced by barely concealed desperation. Michael, I know we got off to a rocky start, but I really need your help here. What kind of help? The board meeting. If you could just emphasize the positive aspects of our collaboration, maybe downplay some of the client issues. I sipped my coffee slowly. Rachel, I'll answer any questions they ask me honestly. But you could frame things in a way that shows we're working together as a team. We are working together. That's not the problem. But the numbers told their own story. Under Rachel's leadership, our sales division had lost over $3.2 million in contracts. Client satisfaction scores had dropped to their lowest levels in company history. Our sales pipeline, once robust with prospects, had withered to almost nothing. I spent that week organizing my files, creating a comprehensive timeline of events with supporting documentation. Not out of vindictiveness, but because I knew the board would want facts, not opinions. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. on Friday, May 3, 2024. At 10 a.m. that morning, I received an unexpected call from Walter King, the board chairman and Peterson Industrial's largest shareholder. King was 64, a former Ford executive who'd invested in Peterson Industrial in 2020 and helped guide its expansion. "Michael, I'd like you to attend today's meeting. Janet Williams suggested you could provide valuable context about our recent client issues." "Of course, Mr. King, whatever I can do to help." "Good, and Michael, bring any documentation you think might be relevant." I arrived at the boardroom 15 minutes early, carrying a leather portfolio containing 4 months of carefully organized evidence. Not stolen documents or illegally obtained recordings, just business correspondence, meeting notes, and client feedback that had crossed my desk through normal channels. The boardroom itself was impressive. A mahogany table that could seat 12, surrounded by leather chairs and walls lined with photographs documenting Peterson Industrial's 40-year history. This was where major decisions got made, where the company's future was determined. Rachel was already there, seated next to Thompson. She'd dressed for battle in a sharp navy suit, her presentation materials spread across the table. Thompson kept checking his phone, his leg bouncing nervously under the table. The 7 board members filed in precisely at 2 p.m. Walter King, Janet Williams, and 5 other executives who'd built Peterson Industrial from a small machine shop into a $160 million operation. These weren't just investors. They were industry veterans who understood the complexities of manufacturing and client relationships. "Let's begin," King announced. "We're here to address concerns about our sales division's recent performance." Rachel launched into her prepared remarks. Charts showing market challenges, graphs explaining industry headwinds, slides about strategic repositioning, and long-term growth potential. For 20 minutes, she painted a picture of external forces beyond anyone's control: supply chain disruptions, increased competition from overseas manufacturers, changing client preferences. "Any questions?" she concluded confidently. King leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Rachel, can you explain why Johnson Automotive cited technical incompetence in their termination letter?" Her composure cracked slightly. There were miscommunications about specifications." "What kind of miscommunications?" "Engineering details. Very complex stuff that our manufacturing team should have caught earlier." Janet Williams opened her laptop. "I have the email chain here. You promised custom gaskets with temperature resistance up to 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Our manufacturing team says you never consulted them about feasibility. I was told that was within our capabilities." "By whom?" Silence. King turned to me. "Michael, Janet says you have some relevant documentation?" I opened my portfolio calmly. "Yes, sir. I've been tracking client communications over the past 4 months. I distributed copies of key emails, meeting transcripts, and contract modifications. Everything properly dated and sourced. This email from Sarah Martinez at Ford explicitly states her concerns about technical gaps in our contract proposal," I explained. "These are the 14 specification errors their team identified." Rachel's face went pale as the board members reviewed the documents. "And this is Dave Kellerman's feedback about the Johnson account. He specifically mentions promises that weren't coordinated with our production schedule." King studied the papers carefully. "Michael, in your professional opinion, were these issues avoidable?" "Yes, sir. With proper technical review and manufacturing coordination, absolutely. These weren't market forces or competitive pressures. These were internal process failures." "Rachel, how do you respond to this?" She fumbled through her notes, but the evidence was overwhelming. Then Thompson made his fatal mistake. "Look, Rachel's still learning. She brings fresh perspectives that our industry needs. Sometimes you have to take risks to innovate. King's expression hardened. Thomas, are you suggesting that losing $12 million in guaranteed revenue was an acceptable risk? No, that's not what Because according to these documents, this wasn't innovation. This was incompetence. The room fell silent. Rachel stared at her hands. Thompson loosened his tie. King continued, "There's something else we need to address." He produced a manila folder I hadn't seen before. Our IT department conducted a routine audit of corporate expenses. They found some irregularities. My heart rate quickened, though I kept my expression neutral. Dinner receipts, hotel bookings, personal charges on company credit cards. King's voice was ice cold. All involving Rachel Cooper and Thomas Thompson. $7,200 in unauthorized personal expenses over the past 7 months. Rachel's chair scraped against the floor as she stood abruptly. This is a witch hunt. You're looking for someone to blame for market conditions beyond our control. Sit down, Rachel. She sat. The board has made its decision. Rachel Cooper, your employment is terminated immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Thomas Thompson, you have 2 weeks to transition your responsibilities before your departure. Thompson's face went ashen. Walter, we can discuss this privately. No, Thomas. We're past that point. Your personal conduct has compromised your professional judgment and cost this company millions of dollars. King turned to me. Michael, the board would like to offer you the position of Vice President of Sales, effective immediately. Your annual salary would be $140,000, plus performance bonuses tied to client retention and new business development. I took a deep breath. The moment I'd worked toward for 8 years was finally here. But something had changed in me over the past 4 months. Mr. King, I appreciate the offer more than you know, but I need to decline. The room erupted in surprised murmurs. May I ask why? Over the past few months, I've realized something important about myself. I value trust above everything else. And while I respect this company deeply, I think it's time for me to build something new. Something based on the relationships and reputation I've spent years developing. I stood and shook hands with each board member. Thank you for the opportunity. And for setting things right. 2 weeks later, I submitted my resignation and began planning my exit strategy. 8 months later, in December 2024, I founded Harris Industrial Solutions from a modern office space in Novi, Michigan. 3 of Peterson's most important clients followed me, including Sarah Martinez at Ford. We closed that $12 million contract in April 2025, not as Peterson Industrial, but as partners who understood what trust really means. My new company operated differently. No corporate politics, no nepotism, just experienced professionals delivering exactly what they promised. Within 10 months, we had 12 employees and $22 million in signed contracts. I heard through industry connections that Rachel tried to land another VP position at several companies, but word travels fast in manufacturing circles. Her name had become synonymous with the Peterson Industrial debacle. She eventually took a marketing position at a software company, far removed from industrial manufacturing. Thompson took early retirement to his cabin in Traverse City. Peterson Industrial struggled for another year before King brought in an outside CEO to rebuild the company's reputation. As for me, I learned that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something better, something that can't be taken away by politics or affairs or corporate games. When you know your worth, you don't need anyone else to validate it. Sometimes the greatest victory is walking away from a fight you've already won. If you enjoyed this story, like this video, and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and ring the notification bell to receive alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.